Disclaimer, I went into this movie as a fan first. A Batman fan. Team Batman. I left the theater as a fan. Also Team Batman. So the question, you're probably wondering, why do I have a Superman shirt? 2 reasons that I'll try to answer at the end of this review. So Batman vs. Superman, us comic book fans have been waiting for this since 2013, 2012ish, since Man of Steel dropped, and we heard that in a Man of Steel sequel, we had Ben Affleck cast as Batman. Well, whether you loved that decision or you hated that decision, the point is that most people were getting pretty hyped for this movie, especially when the trailers finally dropped and we saw that this movie was Batman vs. Superman, Dawn of Justice. So, was it good, though? Yes, it was cool. No, it wasn't a good movie. It was a very cool movie with a lot of mess going on. Starting off with the positives, what did I like about this movie? I absolutely loved Ben Affleck as Batman. This dude kills it. He's dark, he's gritty, he's just a comic book accurate portrayal, and you can tell that just by his facial expressions and all his dialogue performed, this dude's been through a lot, and it's definitely an accurate Dark Knight Returns portrayal of Batman, just as I loved it. He absolutely carried this movie. But unlike Heath Ledger's Joker, there's only so much one man can do to carry a 2-hour and 40-minute movie. Another thing I liked was the political aspects of the movie. Superman is basically on trial by the public throughout the majority of the movie. People are trying to ask the question, what does Superman have to do in our world? How did he get here? What's his place? And it had in that sense, it felt like a Man of Steel sequel. In that sense, I really liked it. Another thing I loved about this movie was the fights. The superhero action, when it finally hits the fan, when it finally goes down, it looks great, apart from one minor scene that I might touch on during my spoiler review. But in general, the fights, or at least the 2 to 3 action scenes they actually had in this 2-hour and 40-minute movie, were very well choreographed and really well done. So those are the things that I liked about the movie. Ben Affleck as Batman, the portrayal of the Man of Steel sequel themes, and, of course, the fights. Now, what did I not like about this movie? First of all, there's not enough action in this 2-hour and 40-minute movie entitled and marketed Batman vs. Superman. Long story short, I went in the theater with 3 snacks, and I looked to my friend to my left, and I was like, bro, I'm not going to open a snack unless they show me something worth opening a snack for. When things actually get rolling, when there's some action, then I'm going to eat my snacks. In this 2-hour and 40-minute movie, I only opened 2 snacks. Was I hungry? A little bit. Was I frustrated with that? Yeah, a lot. In this 2-hour and 40-minute movie marketed Batman vs. Superman, they only had 2 major action sequences that really got me excited enough to open a bag of Airheads. That's a problem. This next horrible thing about this movie that just makes this movie nothing more than a cool looking mess of a movie is its plot. Its plot has no focus, it goes all over the place, and it just feels incohesive as a movie as a whole. In fact, you know what? Exhibit A. This is the plot diagram of Batman vs. Superman. The problem with this movie is laid out here. It tries to be so many things. It has what I call Age of Ultron-itis. If you remember last year to Avengers Age of Ultron, it was so focused in setting up its future movies in the Marvel Universe that it didn't focus on being a good movie itself. That's what Batman Superman suffers from. You have this movie trying to be a Batman origin/solo film. You have it trying to introduce new characters like Lex Luthor. You have it Lois Lane's side quest to become relevant, which is done unsuccessfully. It's trying to be a Man of Steel sequel, but towards the very end, we get Batman and Superman finally fighting. And let me just say, the reason, when it all comes down to it, the reason they actually fight just feels so insignificant in the grand scheme of the Justice League universe. And did I mention they only fight for about 5 minutes. Batman only fights Superman for about 5 minutes of a 2-hour and 40-minute movie that is, again, marketed as the battle between the gladiators, Batman versus Superman. That is deceptive. That is dishonest marketing, Warner Brothers. That's not cool. I didn't like that as a fan. But that's the second thing. The plot didn't know where it was going. And the last thing that I had to touch on is Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. Oh, what were they thinking? I have to give him some credit because it was a pretty good performance, but what were they thinking in his direction as a character? I'll touch more on that on my spoiler review. Long story short, he fell out of place, and that was a very bad casting choice, having him be Lex Luthor. So in total, Batman vs. Superman is like going to the Golden Corral for an ice cream cone. Yeah, you will get an ice cream cone. It's going to taste pretty good. But behind that, in front of that, it's just a whole slew, a whole buffet of things that are done okay, but it's not, it feels totally out of place as a movie in whole. Just like a basketball team is only as good as the sum of its players, the sum of its parts, a movie is only good as how well its teams mesh together. Its scenes mesh together. So, why do I have on a Superman shirt? Well, one reason is because Target only had the Ben Affleck Batman shirts in extra large. And the second reason is because this shirt definitely reminds me of how much this movie right here is the definitive Superman experience. And this movie is a million times better. So overall, Batman versus Superman. Batman featuring Superman, Dawn of the Overbloated Justice League tie-in gets 2.5 stars in my book. 2 stars for Ben Affleck's Batman and 0.5 star for everything else.